Alright guys, episode 3 of Distilling this Pyrolysis oil, and we're not playing around today. As you see, this distiller is different than last time. It's more like a 2-neck flask. I have the feed port kind of on its own little thing now. I also extended this column double. It's double as tall now, packed with stainless steel wool. Semi-bit condenser comes down at this feed port to the flask. So overall this thing should work a lot better, and I also got a better burner. So before I was using a high pressure burner, the one over on the right, and the low pressure burner, which is this one here. This lets me use a lot less fuel, and it will keep it a lot slower, so a slower heating rate. So with that being said, let's get started. Enough talk. We're gonna put 1,000 ml of pyrolysis oil in here. Raw crude pyrolysis oil. So as you can see, the stuff doesn't look bad on its own. It's really dark, but you know, it has a nice viscosity to it, nice kind of like tint, a little orange tint to it. So overall, I'd say it's not bad on its own. So there's definitely promise for what we can get out of this. Now, every time I pour a damn measuring cup, this crap happens to me like for the first couple seconds, and I know I suck, and I know I'm not good, but why? Why does that always happen? And there's also this kind of sludgy stuff at the bottom, and I pour that in as well, and that kind of like heavier stuff, I feel like that's what gives it the color. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and turn this burner on. As you can see, I can have it at a really low heat, and it will hold that low heat. When I would have the high pressure burner on this low heat, it would just go out, right? So that's the biggest advantage. We can really heat this thing slow. Really slow, and that's the key. So after about like 4 or 5 hours, we start getting our first drips, and we have the temperature here 164 degrees Fahrenheit and 74 degrees centigrade. So that's the first fraction. It really starts probably around 160 or maybe around like 72 or 73 centigrade, you know. And as you see, it's dripping pretty good there. And this is another thing about distillation. When you do it properly, it should just be drips. So a little bit later, 184 Fahrenheit, 84 centigrade. And as we can see, it is developing a nice little fuel here. So I went ahead and I changed the flask at this point because I wanted to make sure that we're keeping all the fractions separated. So as you see, even though it's dark in there, when I go pull it out with a pipette, it does have a nice amberish color to it, right? A nice brown color. So it's not necessarily dirty. I think it's just because there's some water in there. And this other flask, around this other time, as you see, it is different. It's more golden, so it is a new fraction. So that's exactly why I changed the flask out when I did around the 190 Fahrenheit. What is that, like 75 C range? Or I don't know exactly what it is. But anyway, as we can see, it's flammable and it burns pretty good. Really quite calorific. I had to speed it up. It just kept burning for a while, like a long time, guys. And this other fraction here, the more golden fraction, let's see if that burns. It does. And both of them light just like gasoline, just like instant, you know? Like as soon as you put that lighter on there, they're up and they explode a little bit. So that's great to see. 220 degrees Fahrenheit and 104 degrees centigrade. And at this point, I changed the flask again because I reckon that this stuff is a different fraction as well. And as you can see, this stuff is really clean looking, like completely see-through, just with a little golden color to it. Looks really good. So in terms of looks, this probably is my favorite looking oil so far, and the pipette it looks even better. Let's see if it lights. It does. Excellent. 250 Fahrenheit, 121 centigrade. I changed the flask again, just because I'm trying to make sure, you know, if we're getting different fractions, they're separated. I changed the flask again after that one got kind of full. The temperature did rise quite a bit again. Like every time the temperature rises, like around 50 degrees Fahrenheit, I'll change it, right? So 325 Fahrenheit, 163 centigrade, absolutely great, absolutely crazy. This is the hottest we ever got this distiller before, and I don't have the timestamps in here because I didn't care about managing the time. It just was gonna take how long it did. But I'm just letting you guys know, like at this point, this thing has been running for almost like 6 or 7 hours. So as you see, this is a new fraction, and this stuff actually kind of looks like diesel, if you ask me. 400 Fahrenheit and 204 centigrade. And this stuff down here, it really is looking like diesel. Like that's how diesel looks. And you know, I think that's amazing. It makes sense with the temperatures we're working at. Like we're gonna start to get diesel. Like we're certainly not getting gasoline at 204 centigrade. Alright guys, we got the results from the 8-hour distillation of 1,000 mil of pyrolysis oil. And what I have here is basically all the fractions. Now this is not completely all of the pyrolysis oil harvested because I did have to stop the distillation prematurely because it started to rain. That's why there's a lot of water on the top of these lids. But anyways, in order of what we have here, the fractions. So this is the first. This is regular pyrolysis plastic crude oil, the raw stuff we get. This right here is the first fraction of gasoline. Let's take a look at that. Actually, let's take a look at this typical pyrolysis oil first. You see just completely black, very dark color. Does have a little bit of like an orange yellowish tint in there. It does create some vapors. As you can tell, there is some pressure at the top, the lid here, and yeah, it just is a really dark color mix of everything pretty much. So next we have this low-grade gasoline fraction. Now this actually does have some water in it, as you can see the separation there. This does create some vapors as well. You can see the pressure in the lid. 160 Fahrenheit to 190 Fahrenheit. I'm going to do the conversion to Celsius for everybody, centigrade, on the screen. But as you can see, this is pretty low quality. It's pretty dark. But that really is mainly because of the water in there. You know, I'll take this pipette here, and you see when I extract it, just the oil off the top, I skim it. It's more of like a yellowish golden, like an amber. An amber, not a herd, right? So next we have, I consider, mid-grade gasoline. The mid-grade gasoline fraction, 180 Fahrenheit to 200 Fahrenheit. And as you can see immediately, this stuff is a lot cleaner, a lot clearer, and it looks a lot better. However, not as much pressure or vapors forming at the top here. And I take it in a pipette. You could see it's almost like a golden orange type color. So it looks really good. We're going to do a burn test on all of these different oils individually. Next we have, I'd say, mid-grade, kind of high-grade-ish gasoline fraction. And this is 200 Fahrenheit to 300 Fahrenheit. And once again, not much pressure on the top, just to compare the tops of the, for example, this one, as you can see, there's some pressure built up, or even this one, some pressure, but this, nothing. So anyways, as we can tell by the look, see-through, really nice color. Take the pipette, and once again, it's a really beautiful gold color. So we're going to go ahead and close that off. Next, we have over here, this is what I presume to be the start of the diesel fractions, but there probably is still quite a bit of gasoline in here. 340 Fahrenheit to 380 Fahrenheit. And this actually does have some pressure buildup on the top. More than these two, not all that much though. And as we can see by the color, it looks kind of like this grade gasoline, but a little bit darker. Looks like there's some other type of oil in there, which there is, most likely diesel. Take the pipette, and as we can see, this is like a golden color, while the other two were more like a golden orange. This is just a pure golden color. And the last fraction here, guys, is at the very end, and this over here is more than likely complete diesel, as well as probably something else, maybe kerosene, jet fuel in there or something. And I know what you're thinking, why is this so dark? Because we've been going like from dark to lighter, and all of a sudden this gets so dark. And I actually don't really know why that's the case, and I'll show you in a second. So first of all, this is from 380 Fahrenheit to 430 Fahrenheit vapor temperature, and there is some pressure at the top, as you see here. Very interesting. So I'll open this up, and let me show you guys the weird part about this. So obviously it's dark here, but I take a pipette to it, and look, it's a nice brown color when I take the pipette, but on its own it's dark. I don't know how that works. Even if I go to the very bottom where all the heavy stuff would contaminate, right? Once again, a nice golden color. So I don't know why it's dark when it's all together like this. I literally don't know what that is. But anyways, we're gonna get to doing these burn tests, and you can see that all these things are different. They look different. I'm sure they all have different viscosities. And let's get to these tests. Alright, first test is going to be with the crude plastic oil. Now this is just a mix of a whole bunch of different things. So this is pretty much all of these different fractions all in one. Now I don't have an exact measurement for how much of each thing I'm going to put in there. Well, I do actually, because this pipette has little lines on it. So I'm going to try to put about 1 mil of every single thing in there. So as we can see, pretty dark color. Let's put about 1 mil in and see if it will light. Now what I have here is a plasma lighter. Well, it's not really plasma. It's an arc, electric arc, so it will simulate a spark plug. So if it can, catch on fire from this, most likely it can catch on fire on an engine. So as you see, nothing happening, and it doesn't work. That simple, it doesn't catch on fire. So let's go ahead and pour this out. Pyrolysis crude oil, it does not light on its own. Not a high enough octane, or whatever you want to call it. Next, we're going to take this low-grade gasoline fraction. Take a pipette. About 1 mil, just under 1 mil there. It's crazy how different the color is when it's in the pipette. It's so much cleaner. Let's see if it burns. Instant. Burns just like gasoline. Now I will say this is a very smoky and sooty and slutty flame that this thing produces. I will not lie. And before we move on to the next fuel, I do want to show you guys, so we have a good control. I have a little beaker full of gasoline, pure gasoline here. Well, not pure, gasoline right from the pump. So as we can see, a huge color difference between all the things. This is probably the cleanest looking thing. We're going to take 1 mil of this and we're going to burn this just so we can see how gasoline burns. The stuff you do put in your car, you do put in your engine. How does this burn in comparison to everything else? So 1 mil in. Catches on fire very easily. Is producing some black smoke, not really being picked up by the camera, but it's just as dirty as the last gasoline fraction, our gasoline fraction, our plastoline. It's just as dirty and sooty and slutty. And that simply could be, well, it is because there's not enough air, not the proper stoichiometric ratio in this lid. But, of course, that has nothing to do with what we're really focusing on right now. Now we're going to do the mid-grade gasoline fraction, 180 to 200. Fill in this pipette here. Mil. Pour it in. See if it lights. Interesting. It does not light. Look at that. So how does that work? How does the so-called lower grade gasoline light when this stuff doesn't? Now it did catch the flame eventually, but you saw it has a much lower octane. So that was a bust in terms of the lightability of it. Let's try this next grade of gasoline. And you know, by the way, guys, I'm saying gasoline, saying diesel. I don't know what the heck this stuff is. I don't know the composition. I don't have the tools. I'm just saying what I think it is. But also, we gotta remember, guys. You gotta remember in the low grade gasoline, it had pressure buildup, meaning there were flammable vapors forming in here. But this does not. Remember, despite this being so-called higher grade, it had no vapor buildup, and this does not have much vapor buildup either. So let's see how this does. The next grade, 200 to 300. And as we know with gasoline, it's the vapors that burn more than anything. So you can see, I really can't get it to get started. So I don't even know what you consider this. This is really, in terms of octane, this is closer to diesel than gasoline. Right? Next is what I actually do consider the diesel fraction, 340 to 380. Now my lighter went out. Would you look at that? Alright, so my plasma lighter went out, so I gotta use the good old typical lighter. I know this is not best practice to have an open flame, but this is really all I got right now. Other lighter is MIA. So let's see. As you see, it does not catch a flame. If this was gasoline, it would have definitely caught that flame and ran with it. Let's put a little wick in there, just a little piece of this paper towel, light it on fire, and then drop that in, and let's see how that does. So usually this is the test people do to get diesel burning, because it's hard to get diesel burning on its own without a wick. So it's definitely caught fire, but as you can see, it definitely takes a lot higher of a flash point to get this stuff going, you know. It's just now really getting going after all of that. But it does burn, as you see, and then it is quite calorific. It's lasting a long time. So this is pretty akin to diesel, if you ask me. Alright, and for our last test, we have this last fraction, 380 to 430 Fahrenheit. And though this looks quite heavy right now, for some reason, it only is that way when it's all put together, but once it's sucked up like this in the pipette, it actually has a really nice color to it. So let's get 1 mil and put that 1 mil in here and do our test. Does not catch a flame. Oops, I think I messed that up. I threw it a little bit too far. Let me put another one in. Oops. My bad. Alright. I gotta do this one right. I'll put it in there first. Let it soak up some of that diesel. There we go. So once again, it takes its time to catch, but when it does catch and it does get going, it gets going. Alright, it looks like that's about all that's left of those fractions. So, with that being said, out of all the tests we did, I would say that actually this first grade stuff here was the closest to gasoline we had. So with that being said, let's get to the next step. So guys, here I have a 2-stroke engine. This is a weed whacker, steel manufactured, and this runs off of gasoline mixed with some special 2-stroke oil. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to run some gasoline mixed with the 2-stroke oil into this thing just to make sure that it really works as a control. And then we're going to pour all that out and then run it until it burns out all the fuel, all the vapors left over. And then we're going to put some of this plastiline in there. Of course, we're going to mix it with the 2-stroke oil as well so we don't damage the engine, and see if it runs, how long it runs, how well it runs, does it create a lot of smoke, all that type of stuff. So yeah, let's get to it. What I will do first though is I will make sure I remove most of, if not all, the water that I can from all the plastiline fractions that we're going to use in here. So I'm just going to siphon off all the oil, leave the water behind.